Before you use this guide, there are a few notes that we have for you. First of all, sock knitting is not a quick or easy thing to do. An experienced knitter will take 2 dedicated days of 8 to 10 hours each to knit a single sock, 4 days to knit a pair of socks. The fastest I've ever knitted was 2 pairs of socks in 7 days. An inexperienced knitter can expect to spend 2 weeks or more on a project, and to need assistance and instruction from books or from knitting circles. It's a frustrating thing. In the Age of Homespun, a very famous book about the art of the 19th century, they found scores of socks with their needles still in them, unfinished, in attics and museums, because knitting socks takes a long time and it's really frustrating. But our foremothers mastered the art of sock knitting, and they have passed that knowledge down to us in knitting circles and in books. You can do it. We have some notes about the sources that we've used for this project and the ones that I use on a regular basis. I want you to remember that Mary Thomas wrote her books in 1938 and 1940. This is in fact the 1941 edition from Canada. It has some little cartoons throughout the book to sort of help you on in your pursuit of fine knitting, and some of them are sadly racist or
might
sexist.
Might be considered a bit inflammatory by today's standards.
They would be. For example, Syncopated Brioche has a black jazz singer not being shown in a very positive light. Please remember that if you use these books, she was writing them in the 1930s, and times were different then. People had different ways of thinking. I still find her books to be an excellent resource of knitting information, some of the best, better than many of the modern books. For example, she has an absolutely wonderful section on how to knit and repair socks. Brilliantly written. However, at the beginning of the section, she, like many people, makes the mistake of identifying a 4th century Roman sock as having been knitted, like as in straight needle knitting. It isn't. This technique is nail binding. There's been extensive research done by Peter Collingwood and by Richard Rutt about when and how straight needle knitting developed. Those Roman socks were made with a technique called nail binding, and it is quite different than knitting and can be distinguished by looking at its increases and decreases. This book is an excellent resource of the history of knitting. Not a word is wasted, and it will tell you how straight needle knitting came to be. I learned to knit in a knitting circle, and I teach in knitting circles. Knitting circles are clubs that meet maybe 2 hours once a week or twice a week, and people bring their projects, and the teacher has a chance to give individual instruction to the students about particular problems that they're having. It's also a communal style of learning. Anyone can ask a question, and anyone can answer it if they know it. The point is, YouTube is not very personal. So I've given you a very long, complete set of sources about how to knit socks. Some of those things you may know. And I encourage you to seek out a knitting circle or a knitting club, because they will be able to help you with specific problems in a very entertaining and communal way.
Good news is that sock knitting is once again quite popular. If you, there are plenty of book sources and internet sources you can use to help you. If you want to learn more from us, you can contact me at joshla@moralfiber.org, or go to our family website at moralfiber.org, or you can find plenty of her best works.
Thanks, Josh.
Yes.